So, hi everyone. I'm really excited to be talking today about mobile accessibility basics. So, which means building projects focused on all users. So, before we start, just a quick intro. So, my name is Deborah, or Deb for short, and I've been working at Fielder UK for about like 1 year and 9 months. So right now I'm architect developer. So Ben has introduced Fielder UK before, but yeah, we are a web and mobile development agency. And I've been an accessibility, or A11 for short, enthusiast for a long time. It's a topic I really enjoy. I appreciate. I find it's really important. And yeah, this is why I want to share like some of my recent learnings. And my GitHub and Twitter handles are the same, so Déb Ornellas. And yeah, let's get started. What we will be covering today. So main 4 points would be, what is mobile accessibility? So the basics about it, some common issues that we may face, like users may face in mobile application about accessibility, some concepts and quick wins that we can get to know and then apply in our projects, and how can we developers be a part of the change for the better. Cool. So starting with what is mobile accessibility, I wanted to first start with a sentence that I think is really powerful, which is access to information, including the internet, is considered a human right by the United Nations. So this is present in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This has been ratified by most countries in the world, including the UK. So yeah, what is mobile accessibility then? I really like the Mozilla, the MDM definition on web accessibility. I adapted it a little bit to say that mobile accessibility is the practice of making your mobile applications usable by as many people as possible. And so I guess all users, this includes users with disabilities. And some important acronyms that we may find when studying this topic, when applying accessibility to a project, are the W3C, so the World Wide Web Consortium. And they have this initiative that is called the Web Accessibility Initiative. And this initiative has developed guidelines that are considered like if you ever need to, for your website to be considered accessible, where you go see the WCAG standard. It is an international standard, and for most countries that have laws related to websites being accessible, they are based on the WCAG guidelines. Right now, the latest version is the 2.1. That is a 2.2 version that may be released soon. But yeah, and there are also like 3 levels of compliance, A, AA, and AA, and 3As, which I would say like the gold standard, the go-to if your website or mobile application need to be accessible would be the AA. Some stats about how many people use mobile phones and how many people are disabled in the world in the UK. So around like 2/3 of the global population are phone users, and roughly 1 in 7 people have disabilities, which is a non-negligible proportion of people. For the UK, it's interesting. I didn't find the stats on unique phone users, but I found that we have around like almost 100% of the population worth of mobile connections, phone connections. And the disabled population is roughly 1 in 5 people, so 20% of the population. It's definitely like, I guess no one wants to ignore 20% of the population when designing and building apps. So now going to types of disabilities, I guess one common misconception that we may have when thinking about disabilities is we tend to think in many cases about permanent ones as being the only types of disabilities there are. But no, there's also, we need to always factor in temporary and situational disabilities. This is an image that I really enjoy from the Microsoft Inclusive 101 Toolkit, which is a great learning resource about inclusive design. So we can see that, for instance, touch disability can be permanent. So a person that has one arm, it can be temporary for someone that has a broken arm or it's injured arm, or it can be situational, like a mother with their newborn baby, and she can also only use one arm. So one app that is accessible for touch type disabilities are going to help not only the person with permanent disabilities, but everyone that has temporary or situational disabilities as well. So what are the common issues that users may face with accessibility? So non-inclusive design, what happens when we developers only use our own point of view when designing and developing apps? So this is a quote that I also took from the toolkit. If we use our own abilities and biases as a starting point, we end up with products that are designed for people with specific gender, age, language ability, tech literacy, and physical ability, and they tend to be the same as ours. So it ends up meaning that we're likely excluding other people from enjoying the same experience that we are with these applications. So common issues with mobile apps in terms of accessibility. We are going to go more into detail on how to fix most of them, but they will be low contrast colors, small touch areas, inaccessible forms, low support for voiceover, can come, for instance, because of a lack of area labels, no support for pinch zooming in and out, or too much reliance on high-speed connection, because having a low-speed connection can also be a type of situational disability. What are the consequences of this? Users with disabilities will have trouble loading content, understanding content, maybe navigating through views, performing the actions that you really wanted them to do, or maybe using your app at all. Like they may just think that it's not worth the trouble and uninstall your app and go for another one if there's an accessible alternative. So, okay, now I've chosen a few, like of course there are many accessibility concepts and many ways and actions to fix issues, but I chose some of the main ones. I guess first starting with color. Color contrast is one of the most, I guess when you search about accessibility basics, color contrast is one of the main topics you're going to find. And the criteria that we have in the WCAG guidelines is that the minimum contrast should be a proportion of 4.5 per 1 for small text and 3 per 1 for large text. And then I've seen this a couple of times and I always wondered, what does it mean? And what it means, thanks W3C, they explained that it's the ratio between the relative luminance of the lighter of the colors and for the relative luminance of the darker one. So I guess the highest contrast that you can have, it would be like black and white. So black text on white background or vice versa. And here we have like two examples. I took those from the Android guidelines on contrast between like text and background that is okay and not okay. So here comes our first quick win. It would be, especially if you have access, if you are building your own project, or if you are a UX UI designer, or if you have access to your UX and UI designers before the color palette is agreed on, or if you can easily change, test your app colors for accessibility before defining a palette, because this can make a huge difference for the visibility, for the readability of your content. And sometimes it's not really obvious. Again, like if we think if we try to design from our own points of view, we may end up just think, oh, this works for me. So for instance, some of the examples on the non-legible examples, to me, they look all right, but they will not necessarily look all right to all users. So it's really important to have this like neutral point of view of going through a color contrast tool and testing it and making sure they adhere to the guidelines. Still talking about like color. So one, like as developers, we love dark mode. We use dark mode, like most of us. I don't want to say for everyone, but most of us use dark mode in many apps. But one interesting thing is like dark mode is something that is not a nice to have or just for aesthetics. Like if you can provide dark mode on your app, especially if your app has like very big like text, many lines of text, or it requires extensive reading from your users, it will help because some users have may struggle reading over light backgrounds. And a quick win about, so I would say most modern fonts have the possibility in their accessibility tools to set the screen colors to be grayscale or inverted colors. So you can try it on, you can find on your phone how to set it to grayscale, for instance. I recommend, I tried it recently, and it's really, it's a quick way, an easy way to test your app for color accessibility. Set your phone to grayscale, go to your app, check, is it still usable? Was the app relying on colors somehow to communicate error messages or some sort of message that now is lost because there's no color anymore? And this leads us to the last the last point about color. Yeah, don't rely on color to display any sort of message, because even if the font is set to all colors, there are users that have visual impairments about and that they cannot distinguish colors from one another. So there's a change. So for instance, in this image from the Android accessibility guidelines, if a user cannot distinguish red from green, it means that this feature is completely useless for them. And it's a complete shame. They may give up on using the app. Oh, so one slide about media. So how to make media, if your app has many images or audios and videos, how to make them more accessible. For images, if your image is informative, if the content is important for the comprehension of whatever you're trying to show the user, add array labels with a short, concise text that informs what you want. So when the users are using screen readers, the screen readers can capture and inform like what you wanted with this image. You don't need to add array label to decorative images. It's you shouldn't add even. And for audios and videos, always include the option to toggle captions. Provide a transcript whenever possible, and do not autoplay sound or video when someone opens an app or a new view, because it may be distracting for many users. So yeah, here in the picture, we have a good example, which comes from the WCAT website. Thankfully, they are compliant and they offer the option to toggle captions on and off. So for the keyboard, another quick win is to use the correct touch screen keyboard, depending on the user input type. So this is quite quick. So on React Native, how do you do this? You can use the keyboard type props of text input. It's really super simple and it makes a huge difference. So I listed there like the options. There are cross-platform, but there are also a few Android specific and iOS specific options for the type. And here we can see some examples. So if we use the default, it's going to be the default keyboard. But if we use the numeric one, like the right keyboard appears. And it helps a lot for users that need big touch types, so just it saves them time and it makes their life easier. Same for email address is another example. Next one would be fonts and font sizes. So another quick win would be choosing relative CSS units for font size instead of pixels. So if you use EM or REM and your users zoom in and out, because this is like many users require zooming in and zooming in to be able to read the content, your layout will be preserved and everything's gonna work correctly. And you're not gonna, like, if not, it's gonna probably be a surprise and your layout may be destroyed. So yeah, people are gonna be able to magnify the text without loss of content. And about like accessible fonts, no perfect choice. I guess the guidelines would be try to avoid fonts that are too complex. Try to avoid fonts that have like character ambiguity. So for instance, the I and the L are quite similar, or things like this. And using too many fonts in the same page may also be distracting and overwhelming for some users. So one of the, I guess, worst ways in which an app can be unaccessible, like and not comply with accessibility guidelines, would be like with forms, because so many important actions that we have to go through day to day in apps and in websites as well go through filling and sending forms. And a quick win that is really, really important is to not only rely on placeholders for information in forms. It's really important to use the label as well. So, I mean, for every user, if you only rely on placeholder text, it is going to disappear as soon as you start typing text. And then you're going to need to rely on the user's short-term memory to remember, okay, what was it that it said? Or they're going to have to go back and forth and delete the text, which is not great UX. But it's even worse for speech output users because they cannot easily infer what the form element is by looking at the surrounding content. And I guess how to do it in React Native. The text input component doesn't have a label prop, but what you can do is use the text native component, like from React Native, and to set like the label, and then you can of course like style it and create your own. But it's really important to to have them for every input. And the last concept that I wanted to talk about, like in this section, would be like buttons. But I guess buttons, it would be better to say touch areas, touch elements. So it's you need to, I saw it written somewhere else, like you need to design for fat fingers, but I guess you need to design thinking that clicking on, like touching small elements can be really painful for all users. So the general guidelines is that you provide a minimal touch area of 48 density independent pixels by 48. Even if the icon button is smaller than this, it's not a problem. If the icon is smaller, you just need to provide this extra area that is also touchable. And then also ensure that they are separated by at least 8 density independent pixels. But also it's really important that they are not too big and cramped one after another, because it's important that our apps have some space that is non-touchable to allow for scrolling. Why it is? Because some users may have mobility issues that may make them click areas that they don't want to. And it's really important that all users can navigate your app without being concerned all the time that they are going to be redirected to somewhere they don't want, or they're going to activate something that they don't want, and while they just wanted to scroll their app. And so yeah, so this was it for the section about like quick wins and concepts. So I wanted to talk now about like how can we as developers contribute to accessibility? How can we be a part of this positive like change and make sure that it's not an afterthought, it's not something that we have to fix and then becomes expensive in the future, but we do as we think of it as really like a core part of our job. So I came with 4 points, 4 suggestions. The first one is getting input from more people during the development process. It goes back to that to the inclusive design. So not only developing from our point of view, but listening to users with disabilities, and then some many UX and UI designers, they have they have been trained about like accessibility guidelines in terms of inclusive design. And if you are not sure, like if your team is not sure whether the app is accessible or not, if you meet the standards or not, it's I guess it's always better to be safe than sorry and hire accessibility experts or an accessibility audit, because then you're going to be like confident that your app actually meets the level of accessibility you want. The second suggestion would be including accessibility testing into the development pipeline. So there are many tools available, various free tools, like Googling for them, like so many resource pages. It's even a bit like overwhelming to see how many free resources there are for accessibility testing. So one that I wanted to highlight that I tried on was the accessibility scanner app from Android. The Android app is free, it's easy to set up. And I guess in 10 minutes, I was already like able to go and test it on both Duolingo and Calm, which are 2 apps I use on a daily basis. And it's I don't want to throw any of them like under the bus, and but it's just to show how even like well-established and loved apps can also like benefit from like quick wins fixes. So Duolingo had a low contrast icon, and Calm could increase the height of the touch target. And this is something like, for instance, accessibility scanner you can use if your app is already installed, even if it's in the development phase, but it's already, you already can install in a physical device, you could use it right away. Then the third suggestion would be fixing accessibility issues that are detected as a priority. And then I know, a caveat, I know that developers don't always have the final say on what is a priority or not. But sometimes we do, sometimes we have like the power to say, okay, I think this issue out of all of the issues that we can fix right now, this one should be fixed right now because it's a priority. And if you are building your own personal project, then of course you have control of the roadmap and the backlog. So why making your app usable by all users is the right thing to do. But if this is not enough of an argument, like if your app is not accessible, you may be blocking people from using your service right now. You may be losing the potential or long-term users if they just give up using it. And you may even, in some cases, be fined. And then finally, I guess another way that we can help and contribute to this change, and making apps accessible, is to learn about it and sharing the knowledge. So hopefully, like knowledge I just shared today has been useful for at least one person. But yeah, some resources that I really recommend, they are like beginner friendly and like really interesting. Nothing boring. It's really like interactive. Is like the Microsoft Inclusive 101 toolkit. For color palette tools, I found at least five of them. the Material UI one was the one I liked the most. The accessibility is kind of app that I mentioned before. It would be, also my choice to like try on one scanner app and try on with like multiple apps that you have. The A11y project checklist is great, really great if you want to if you have an existing app or web app as well, you want to see like how well you're doing right now. It's a great checklist. And then finally, you can dedicate 10 minutes to get to know your phone accessibility settings. So for instance, turn on voiceover or talkback, depending on whether you're using iOS or Android. Set your colors to grayscale, high contrast, inverse colors, and see how it looks like, how your favorite apps look like now. And try on voice commands to see as well like how some users with disabilities use their phones. I highly recommend this. It's like really eye-opening, and yeah, hopefully it will make you as excited about like accessibility as I am. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Looking forward to like hearing questions if you have some.